Hello, and welcome to the podcast, The Guru. My name is Howard Falco, and I'm an author on self-empowerment and a mindfulness and mental strength coach to college and professional athletes and those who are looking for next-level performance and results. The Guru is a podcast offering you the deepest and most powerful wisdom on life and how this wisdom works for you from the inside out. That is, it offers how your mindset has a direct impact on your results. Becoming aware of this process is everything. This podcast is no coincidence. It's been presented to you by you and for you because the truth is, the real guru of your life is always you. Let's see what you brought to yourself today. Hello, and welcome to today's episode of The Guru. I am really excited for today's guest. Part of doing this podcast allows me to not only talk about really interesting subjects that empower the mind, but also talk to individuals in the world who have reached new levels in the world or the highest levels in the world, either in sports, in business, or simply in everyday life. And today on the podcast, I am very excited because I'm going to get into the mind of former Major League Baseball all-star pitcher Russ Ortiz. After his college team, the Oklahoma Sooners, won the College World Series, California native Russ Ortiz was selected by the San Francisco Giants in the fourth round of the June 1995 Major League Baseball draft. On April 2nd of 1998, Russ made his Major League debut for the Giants, starting his career as a reliever. In 1999, Ortiz became one of the National League's premier starting pitchers, and in 2001, Russ compiled a 17-9 record and became the true ace for a very powerful Giants team. In 2002, this Giants team made it all the way to the World Series, where Russ pitched in two key games and actually left Game 6 with a 5-0 lead over the Angels. The Angels would eventually come back to win that game by a final score of 6-5, and then they would go on to win the World Series in 7 games. Russ was then traded to the Atlanta Braves in 2002, and there he put together a spectacular season as one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball, going 21-7 and getting selected to the All-Star team. With Ortiz as the staff ace, the Braves won their 12th consecutive National League East title, and Ortiz took 4th place in the coveted National League Cy Young voting. He then had brief stints at the Arizona Diamondbacks and Baltimore Orioles, and then returned to San Francisco in 2007. He then had brief stints at the Astros, Yankees, Rockies, and Dodgers before retiring after 12 years at the highest level in the game in 2010. Russ was a starting pitcher in 241 games and ended up pitching in over 1,480 innings of Major League Baseball. He had 108 career wins, and he struck out over 1,000 batters. Russ was also a very decent batter for being a pitcher with a .208 lifetime batting average. He had 22 career doubles, 6 career home runs, and 44 total RBIs, which is pretty good. Russ also had a very solid glove, and this is probably the most amazing stat. In over 1,480 innings of work on the mound, he only committed 4 fielding errors. That's amazing. Russ Ortiz, thanks for being here and welcome to the podcast.
I appreciate it, Howard. I'm glad to be here.
So I'm excited to have you on. It's obviously, I think any player in Major League Baseball, any pitcher would be thrilled if you told them that that was going to be their career pitching at the highest level. So congratulations to you for that journey and for everything you accomplished. What I want to dig into with you today, and I'm so grateful that you're on, is what made you tick? What was it that drove you from your competitive spirit? And I guess we can start maybe by taking it back to when you were a youth. Were you always this competitive? Did you always have this dream?
The dream was always there ever since, I played organized baseball, which is at age 5, starting off in T-ball. And ever since then, all I wanted to do was 3 things: was to play in a major league ballpark, play on TV, and have a baseball card. I mean, those are the 3 things that I wanted, so, money and notoriety and all that stuff that comes along with it that I didn't know about, I didn't care about. That was never the dream. And so starting at age 5, played every year growing up, and where the competitiveness has always been there. But it was fueled by, my mom, my grandpa, my brother, growing up. And, that my brother is only 10 and a half months older than I am. And so he and I were always on the same teams, and we practiced together, played wiffle ball, competed against each other. So we always, drove each other, every single day. And that was a great blessing that I had. And, we lived with our grandparents. Our mom got divorced from, was supposed to be our dad. He stopped coming around after a couple of years after they got divorced, and never saw him again. So I was so young, I don't even remember him really. So my brother and I, because of the age, we lived with our grandparents. Our grandpa played baseball through his youth and in the Army and stuff like that. My mom was she was kind of a tomboy growing up and played sports. And so there was this kind of competitive thing there in our family. And we could only afford to play one sport. My brother and I picked baseball, and we just always wanted to compete against each other. And so I do give a lot of credit growing up, to the competitiveness that my brother and I, had growing up. And he was older, so he was always better. So I was always trying to find a way to beat him.
Okay, so your brother was actually, in a way, your mentor in some ways, or the person that you measured up to, since you didn't grow up with a father figure, which is interesting because,
Right.
So your brother and the competitive spirit between the two of you is kind of what drove you to be as good or better than him.
Yeah, I mean, him being the older brother, I'm not going to let my little brother beat me. And me being the younger one, I want to do everything I could to try to beat him, and it's all for bragging rights, basically. Right. But he was always a little more calmer under pressure. And so that's, I would say, is really where it first started, where I understood during pressure situations, you have to be able to think clearly.
Wow.
And so yeah, my brother and I, we talked about this quite a bit with our we had serious wiffle ball games. Like, it was no joke.
It's so funny because I did the same thing as a kid. My buddy was the athlete of the whole community, and we would we would tape the bats up, and we would tape the balls up, and the hedges across the street at the neighbors were the home run. But you said something really cool that I want to kind of dig into, which is this idea of, you realize that a calm mindset, that a clear mindset, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Was important. And how old were you?
This was probably, I would say, when we started Little League, so about 8 years old.
And at 8 years old, you saw the way your brother was handling himself from a mental perspective, and that there was this demeanor that he carried where nothing rattled him, and you picked up on that?
Yeah. He seemed to make less mistakes when he needed to make a pitch, when he needed to get a hit, and stuff like that. Or whether it was basketball, whether he needed to make a shot or whatever, that he just always had this knack to be under more control than I was, where I was, because I was always fighting to beat him. So for me, it was all emotional. For him, it was about strategy. It was about looking at my weaknesses and exploiting my weaknesses, where I wasn't doing that. I was just trying to go off of pure anger and frustration, and thinking like, well, I'm going to try harder. And so, yeah, I think back to that kind of stuff and realize, man, I was really young when I realized this, but that's how I look at like my life and how everything started as, man, such a blessing. We didn't have a dad growing up. You would think, oh man, that's too bad and all that. But I'm like, the way that we grew up, the way things worked out, I was like, it actually was a real true blessing that it worked out that way, because who knows if my brother and I would have competed like that.
Absolutely.
And, and that's something I always give him credit for, is, being an example for me at that young of an age, to where it helped me as I got older. And I really relished that. And I needed some reminders over the years to, hey, remember the, kind of calm under the
Yeah,
storm.
and that's what I want. That's what's so remarkable at 8 years old, that you're able to pick up this idea that he was acting from more of an offensive standpoint, where he was looking at strategy and how he could methodically go about executing what he wanted to execute, whether it was playing wiffle ball, whether it was playing basketball. Whereas you were coming from a reactionary or a defensive way, from your emotions, trying to beat those emotions so that you could feel better. He's thinking from a strategy and execution standpoint. And for you to pick that up as an 8 or 9 or 10-year-old and incorporate that, I can see exactly how you were able to execute and remember that as you brought it into your pitching at the highest level. So that's really, really cool. So you played in high school and you were good enough to get picked up by Oklahoma?
Right. Yeah. I mean, the high school that I went to, I got to go to, again, one of those blessings just from sports is, because I was good, and high school that was near our house is a private school, very expensive, that we couldn't afford, that we were able to get there through financial aid and stuff like that, but very good athletic high school, athletic sports. And it's called Montclair Prep High School. It's no longer open, but so went there and got to play varsity from ninth grade on, and became the top, pitcher on the team and one of the top overall players. And by my junior year, and so I was in the Valley, the San Fernando Valley. One of probably the second best pitcher when I graduated. First was Jeff Suppan, who was a year younger than me, and he had a long major league career. But I was probably the second best in the Valley there. And, I didn't get drafted, but I had, a few looks from colleges, and went and got the opportunity to go to the University of Oklahoma from a relationship between my pitching coach in high school and the coaches at Oklahoma. And that's where I first learned about how great relationships can be. They never saw me pitch. They only went off the word of my pitching coach.
Wow.
Because they trusted him. And
Wow.
So that was my real first experience. Like, man, if you can build relationships, build trust, this just shows how important that is.
Yeah, it's you never know what doors are going to open for you and how that's going to unfold. But this is all unfolding from the dream. I liked how you said at the very beginning that you weren't chasing money or fame. You were chasing this idea of you love to play the game. You wanted your own baseball card. You thought that would be cool. And so you're still loving the game and playing for the love of it. That took you there to Oklahoma, where your team won a College World Series.
Yeah, my sophomore year, we won the College World Series, and that's kind of when I started to see things take off. Right after that, I went to the Cape Cod League, summer baseball, which it's kind of like the echelon of summer baseball for college players. And then went into the junior seasons, a number 2 starter, and didn't work out that way. I mean, there's a lot of life lessons within that whole junior year, but we went back to the College World Series the next year. So I was on some very good teams there. And, that helped me grow. Like I mentioned before, my brother was a huge part of my process when I was younger. My high school pitching coach was huge for me, setting a foundation pitching wise. And then the college coach was really instrumental in helping me be able to become a successful professional pitcher.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask. When do you think the switch was made, or was it earlier? Or did you always have this between throwing and pitching and understanding sort of the next level of the game? Like, did that happen in college, or did you develop that when you got to the Major League Baseball?
No, it was in high school, actually. So I think I was the only freshman on varsity that year. So I pitched and played third base. So there was one game I was pitching against a public school, Kennedy High School, and they had a phenom named Garrett Anderson, who had a tremendous major league career.
Mm-hmm.
He was a junior at that time. I was a freshman. They also had a very good team. So I got to pitch that game, and I got lit up, and Garrett Anderson hit one of the farthest balls still to this day I've probably ever seen. But it was that game that really made me realize that if I'm going to be able to beat the best hitters, then I have to be able to get better at execution. I have to be able to get better at controlling my emotions on the mound. I have to get better at studying hitters and all that stuff. And so I didn't have my high school pitching coach that year, but he came the next year. And because I realized that, but I didn't have a real process in how to accomplish that. So he came in, and right away he had a process. And so from my sophomore year all the way through my senior year, it was just constantly going through that process. And the thing that I loved about him was he tried to simplify it as best as he could. And then, because during the games, you can't overcomplicate things. You know, you do all your training and stuff during practice and all that, and then you go out in the game and kind of let it happen. And so, so we did a lot of training, and he had a ton of insight, and he helped me to develop a great foundation and a process. Even, I mean, conditioning, throwing bullpens, studying hitters, you know, in-game adjustments and all that stuff.
Yeah, and that's what I want to ask you about, the in-game adjustments. So did you ever, I mean, were there, you obviously made adjustments during the game. So if you saw that they were jumping on a lot of first pitches, or if you were trying to get one across early and they started jumping on it, did you make that adjustment to change, to not give them anything good early? I mean, were you that aware, or did you just stick to a game plan of what you were doing and challenge?
For the most part, I did. I made those adjustments with the help of, you know, our catcher and the pitching coach during the games. I think I did a fairly good job, but there was definitely times where, you know, out of frustration or complacency, or even just being too cocky, you know, made decisions on the mound that didn't work out. And and those were things that I had to answer for. So one of the biggest things that he taught me was, you know, the responsibility that I have for what pitch I throw and why. And so that was a process that continued into college, and then continued. And then, so because of just that one thing in high school, and then developing more in college, when I got to professional ball, I saw that I was better prepared.
I was just going to say that,
you know, than other guys, because I was by far the best pitcher on the team, and potentially the best player on the team for, you know, my last 2 years. But at no time was I ever coddled or given a pass for anything. And that's something I always appreciated, because I went into college, and, you know, even though I love every single one of those guys in high school because they were the better players, they were coddled sometimes. They did get away with stuff. I never got away with anything.
Wow.
And so that was something that, you know, I always appreciated. And so, but the foundation really started there in 10th grade in high school.
That's awesome. And I think that's a big point for this podcast and for those young athletes that are listening, that because you weren't coddled, you had to face everything. You had to deal with a lot of things at a young age that didn't blindside you when you got to the next level. So you were being prepared, fortunately, by great coaches in high school and college, how to hone your skills. And I think this all came out of a sense of mindfulness from a very young age. When I say mindfulness, you're aware of, hey, these are the things that I need to understand. This is the level that I've got to be thinking out of as I approach all the preparation for my pitching, including how to deal with challenging scenarios and how to handle my emotions. And I think that can be a tipping point on the mound for a lot of pitchers at any level, is when that challenge hits, how you meet the response. Do you look at it like, okay, I'm going to fire back with emotion? Because that can cause a lot of problems when you do that, because you lose your awareness of what exactly you're trying to do. I often tell a lot of the pitchers that I work with that, look, this is a battle of two intentions. You've got the batter coming up. He's worked his butt off to get in that position to face you. And it's a battle of whose intention is going to win here by who's going to stay more present, focused, and determined during that battle to win it. I don't know if that resonates with you, but I'm sure you've had plenty of experiences over all those innings where those battles went to deep amount of pitches thrown before somebody ended up winning them. But anyways, I think it's really cool that you got the experience of being on a championship team and fighting back to win another championship. All this prepares your mind for the next level because you know what it's like to play at an elite level in high school and elite level in college. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I in high school, like I said, I was probably the second best pitcher in the San Fernando Valley. So I was, I was good at what I did, but when I got to college, I wasn't anything special anymore,
right.
And
right.
so
I had to restart.
Yeah. I had to, yeah. So and the hitters were better and all that stuff. And so I always had to learn how to not only better myself, but to understand the game better and how to slow the game down more. And, so that was a big lesson in college. First, when you get there, if you're not one of the, big men on campus anymore, it could take you take a shot to your egos somewhat because, you feeling pretty good about yourself and you get a scholarship to go play. And then now you look around and you're like, well, that guy's better than me and that guy's better than me and that guy's better than me and that guy's better than me. And I'm like, okay, I got to figure this out. Well, again, it was, okay, reverting back to everything I learned in high school. And I had a lot of conversations with, my pitching coach from high school, still do 30 years later. He texted me yesterday was my birthday. So he texted me. I was like, man, you realize we've known each other for 30 years, thanks. And so, so he's been involved. That's talking about relationships. He's been involved in my life for 30 years and, been a huge impact for me. And so that relationship, that teaching never stopped. And, but getting to college, the whole mental part of it I think is really what helps propel guys forward. I think for most people that are very, very talented, it will take you only so far,
right.
And the mental breakdowns, the mental,
the awareness
troubles that you have, deficiencies, I should say. It might be a bad word, but those will always come up because you're always going to face, huge challenges. But if you don't have the mental toughness to deal with that stuff and a mental awareness to deal with some of that stuff, then your talent will only get you by so many times. And so, yeah, that's a huge important thing.
Yeah. Especially today, because of the amount of talent that there is out there in the, 20, 30 years ago, you could kind of force your way with great talent to be successful. But as things have evolved today, there's so many great players that the vetting process is coming down to that mental edge, to those that really understand how to use their mind to overcome those challenging situations, what that challenge means to them from life, from divinity, from this whole idea of can you get through this? What are you going to let this do? Are you going to let this defeat you? Or are you going to challenge yourself to overcome this? And how somebody reacts to that in any sport, I think, is now the new tipping factor as to who succeeds and who doesn't. Whereas before you could kind of bull your way through it with just raw talent, but there's so much talent out there now.
And I think you make a good point. Like, the talent pool is, probably way bigger than ever before. And you may know the answer to this, but I often hear from high school, college, and professional coaches that the, players, and talking about just baseball, players kind of understanding the rich history of baseball, players understanding how to study situations, study hitters, talking about from a pitcher standpoint, and all that stuff. I've been told that is a lost art so to speak, that a lot of even club, from starting from club age, club coaches are calling all the pitches. High school coaches are calling all the pitches. College coaches are calling all the pitches. And so pitchers aren't being taught actually how to pitch.
Interesting.
So when they have to do it on their own, the way that I think I would look at it is now their ego and their emotion and everything goes into what pitch they want to throw for a certain situation. They want to throw this certain pitch to try to strike this guy out because that will look sexier, instead of
what
throwing
the best pitch is to strike him out.
Or just to get the guy out. I mean,
right.
You have arguably one of the greatest pitchers ever to exist, Greg Maddux, saying, I want action on 3 pitches. And when he said that, I never heard anybody say that. I was like, okay, help explain that. He's like, well, I want them to hit the ball within 3 pitches.
Wow.
And if you look at some games, there are some games that, he struck out a lot of guys, but that really wasn't on purpose, and so he's wanting action on within 3 pitches. Really, he would love it on the first pitch. But that was his goal. And you see how well he did in his career with a goal of wanting them to hit the ball. Right. Compared to having a goal of, well, let me see how many strikeouts I get. Strikeouts look great on your resume. You mentioned it earlier, how many strikeouts. Now, I think early in my career, I'd have been, I remember one time, it was, I don't know, let's say the first 2 months of the season, and at ballparks, they put up stats, just pregame and all that stuff. Well, there was one stat about strikeouts, and I happened to have a lot of strikeouts early in the season. Well, I got all excited and stuff about how many strikeouts. Well, at the end of the year, I was nowhere close to the top 10, on strikeouts. And so, right. But that did make me feel like, man, if I can keep this up, that, that's going to be a good thing for me. And so it didn't necessarily help me in that sense because, now I'm going off of more of emotion, I think, so I wanted to feel good. I wanted to feel good about having more strikeouts instead of just getting outs.
It's such a fine line between staying in that space where you just want to execute and you trust that everything will work itself out, and then wanting to do something dramatic. I talk to my athletes all the time to stay in the moment of execution. You talking to one of the great pitchers of all time, Greg Maddux, and how he told you that he wanted action, because what he was really saying was the most important thing to me is outs, not strikeouts, outs, whichever way they come, because that's what he knew would ultimately lead to greatness. Because the key is outs, not strikeouts, not throwing fancy pitches, because that's what's going to keep you out there, and that's what's going to elevate your whole aura as it relates to your next outing, your team, everything, all the success that you want comes from that. So it's a fine line to get trapped in ego versus to stay in process, to just keep doing what you're doing, to keep grinding, and the rest takes care of itself. And it's also, I've felt more of, because you're on a team sport, you have to put the team first. What's best for the team, not what's best for me as a pitcher, but what's best for the team. And right now we need a ground ball to our shortstop, because that'll take care of a lot more than me trying to use my ego to strike this guy out. That could, if I miss, or if it doesn't work out, that could hurt us. But I know if I throw this pitch, he's going to put it on the ground, and we might get out of this right now with a double play.
And he looked at it from a, in the long run standpoint, to where the less pitches he throws, the less amount of stress he has. He talked about how in the end that will help him in the playoffs, help him win games in the playoffs. And, so he was thinking about the long season, but he knew also that was, in a sense, a recipe for success for a long career. But he was looking at it in the sense of getting outs, getting a win, getting a team win, and helping to get to the playoffs, and then eventually winning in the playoffs. And so that was something that, was a new concept for me. I mean, I love to win. All I cared about was our team winning. I didn't care about whether
awesome.
I got the win or anything like that. I didn't care about how pretty it looked or how gross it looked, but I just cared that we won at the end of the day,
Wow. That's powerful, Russ.
Yeah. And I knew if I did my job, then the numbers would take care of themselves. And they did, and, my career ERA, I think, is 4.5. A lot of that had to do with the second half of my career, but it's 4.5, and I could care less. I look at how many wins I helped the team get. I have my own personal record, but then, I would love to find out the team record that we had, because those are the things that I cared about. And so when, you hear Greg Maddux talk about what's important for him, he also looked at it as like the rest will come. Like you're talking about strikeouts. Mm-hmm. He's like, the strikeouts, he goes, they'll just come. He's like, yeah, if I get a guy 0-2, I'm going to throw this certain pitch. There's times where he's like, I know I can throw this pitch and strike him out. But then he also thought, I don't want to show this guy that pitch the first at bat, because I want to keep that for the seventh inning, the eighth inning. And when I know that I need it, if I don't have to show that to him, then even better. And he may not even show that to him the 3 games that he faces that team, but that 4th game, potentially in a playoff clincher or whatever, he'll show that. And he's had that in his back pocket the whole time. And I thought that was one of the coolest things I've ever heard.
That's really incredible. And it just shows you how he's playing chess versus checkers. Everybody else playing checkers. But there's a couple things that are important in that. First, when your mindset's on the we rather than the I, especially in a team sport, and you're in that mindset and in that type of positive collective energy of what comes first is the team, everything does fall in place. I believe there's a positive karma to that, versus trying to be an individual guy on a team sport and worrying only about your numbers. I just don't think it works in today's world. So that's really cool that he was way ahead of it then. And then having the wherewithal to see the big picture in 2 ways. One, he saw it from the standpoint, hey, I'm going to be ready in the playoffs because I know we're going to get there. So he already had that mindset, hey, we're going to get there. I'm going to do everything I can in these games. And then he was carrying the team in a way from that mindset of belief, like, oh yeah, we're getting to the playoffs. And when we get there, here's what I'm going to be ready for. And then also in the middle of a game, hey, I'm going to hold this pitch back. I'm going to set this guy up right now. I know what I'm going to do. I know how I can execute and get him out, but I'm going to hold this one back because he's going to think he's going to make an adjustment later in the game, and he's not going to see this coming. Hey, while you're listening, I just wanted to remind you that both of my books on self-awareness and self-empowerment are available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all independent bookstores. My first book is titled I Am, The Power of Discovering Who You Really Are. And the second one is Time in a Bottle, Mastering the Experience of Life. Both are powerful, deep dives into how to harness your greatest power for self-understanding and for overcoming any issue in your life. The books also reveal how to be a conscious creator of your life and how to achieve next level results. Along with the actual book, the book is available on Audible, in my voice, and on Kindle and iBooks. Also, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button so that you can be updated when new episodes are released. Thanks, and now back to the podcast. So you get drafted out of Oklahoma in the 4th round, I believe it was. And you finally get into your first game in 95, was it? Right.
Yeah.
What did that feel like? And how did you approach that mentally when you got to that next level?
So I was a closer. I got drafted as a closer out of Oklahoma. And pretty much, 95% of my career was as a starter, but in professional ball, but I was a closer. And so that first half season, because when you get drafted, it's just a half season. And then the next full season, 96, I was a closer. So I remember after I signed and then got to Bellingham, Washington, they gave me like a week to get ready, to get acclimated, because I hadn't faced competition. They wanted me to kind of settle in because it just got done with the season in college, and so just give me a short break. And then because of that short break, had to just make sure we did it safely. And I remember that first time I warmed up, I had the thought of like, man, I made it, like this is what I've been dreaming about, playing professional ball. Had no clue about like what it was going to take to move up.
Right.
But it was just a feeling of, thinking, man, all the wiffle ball games my brother and I played, all the competition, and just loving the game. And now I'm in this position wearing a professional uniform, getting ready to go on for my first, outing. And so it was a really cool moment. But then I had to quickly get over that moment and concentrate to be able to get ready to go do my job. And, then once I got out there, I mean, that's probably the most adrenaline I've ever had besides my first major league outing. And the crazy thing, and I'll just throw this in because it still blows my mind. So when I was a closer in college, I don't ever remember throwing harder than 93. And I only saw that in the College World Series in 95 when I got to pitch. My first outing in professional ball, I was 95 and 97. So the whole time that I'm a closer for that year and a half, I'm anywhere from 94 to 97 consistently. And I mean, to this day, I'm like, I only took a week off from the College World Series to when I got to Bellingham, Washington, and from till this day. And then when I became a starter, I would touch 97 every now and then. And so I don't know what the heck that was, but
something about next level.
It was just, it was just, I don't know if it was just that extra adrenaline, of
I'd throw something
the situation, but I really don't know because I don't, like I said, none of my teammates, because I've asked them, ever remember me throwing that hard. And so, just a week later or 10 days later, I'm throwing a lot harder. So that was really cool too, to find out after the game, all the guys that were in the stands charting and doing the radar gun and stuff after the game, they all come up to me and they're like, what was that? Kind of like, what are you talking about? They're like, do you know how hard you were throwing? I was like, no. And they told me, and it just blew me away. And, and I was like, I didn't take it as, well, I'm going to try to throw that hard every time. It was just.
Right. Because you can't really try. What you were doing was trying to be very, very present to make sure you executed at the highest level you possibly could. What happens is that presence, in my experience, working with athletes, actually slows you down just enough so that you can go faster. And what I mean by slowing down to go faster, it's like in golf, right? When you slow your swing down just a little bit, somehow you pick up yards because everything times better. Centrifugal force occurs more powerfully because your timing is better. Nothing is being jerked or is rigid. Everything's more fluid when you slow down, and it actually speeds up the end result. So my guess would be that you locked yourself so much into the moment that you were so precise that you relaxed just enough to have everything speed up in that moment. From a standpoint of miles per hour on your pitches, just everything came together. That's my guess.
Obviously, my arm speed sped up, what the body parts that I used, it was just a little bit different, a little better, to allow me to do that. And I really didn't ever try to throw that hard. Of course, there's times when pitchers do that, they overthrow just like a golfer would try to crush a drive, stuff like that. But yeah, that, what that did for me was, I looked at it right away as well, I need to take advantage of this instead of looking at it like, I don't understand this. And then spending time trying to figure it out. And,
You just went with
this
it.
doesn't make sense to me and all that stuff. It's just like, no, I'm just going with it. And, and didn't spend any time like trying to figure it out, because that's just the way that I just looked at it.
Right. Did you ever have any doubt about yourself facing anybody, or did you always feel like it didn't matter who got in that box, that you had the capability to beat them and you weren't going to worry about it? You were just going to go about your business, or did you ever have doubt facing a great hitter?
Well, from high school all the way to the end of my career, I mean, there was hardly anybody that I faced where I just was like, I don't know if I can get this guy out, or this guy makes me nervous, and so there was hardly anybody. I may not be able to say names or remember names, but probably maybe only a handful of times. And I always attribute that to the foundation that was laid for me in high school.
That's great.
I always attribute that to, because, I've always been taught to respect the hitter,
So
and yeah. And a cool thing was when my first outing in the major leagues, in Houston in 1998, Dusty Baker told me before I ever got in his office, he said, when you get in, throw your warm-up pitches and all that stuff. Before you start the inning, he's take a look around, enjoy the moment. You've earned being there. When the batter gets in the box, look at the hitter and show some respect to the hitter, because he's also earned the opportunity to be there.
Brilliant advice.
And then the coolest thing that he ever said was like, and then get to work.
Yep.
And
ooh, I got goosebumps. I do. It's really great advice.
And so I did that exact thing. And the funny thing is that the first guy I faced was a college teammate of my brother. That was his brother. So I always heard about him, and it was kind of interesting that I actually was facing this teammate's brother, but I did exactly that. I looked around. We were in the Astrodome, the big dome. It was kind of like the whole moment in Bad News Bears, where the kid looks up and, that ceiling is, is really high and all that stuff. And I just looked around and soaked it in. I was like, this is unreal. And got on the mound. Sean Berry got in the batter's box. And, and I did the thing that Dusty was recommending me do is just like, all right, giving him credit. And then it was like a switch turned on. It's like, all right, now it's time to go to work. And that, it's those types of things to where I think about the stuff that I was taught in high school and in college and in the minor leagues. And then to have your major league manager say something like that to where it's like, you kind of feel like, man, I've had people helping me to prepare for this exact moment.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's a really cool feeling.
So Dusty Baker, to have that kind of wisdom, because obviously his successful career and all the great players he's coached is incredible. And I want to break down for the listener what that actually means and why it's important from a mental perspective. So when you do not respect your opponent, you immediately are losing some awareness of how to beat them, because you expect to beat them rather than intend to beat them. And when you go to expectation, you start to take your edge off. And the minute you take your edge off and you have that kind of, for lack of a better word, ignorance about what they can do because you expect to beat them and you're not respecting them, life likes to show you that ignorance through losing that battle. So to start from a place of respect, saying, hey, they've worked hard to be here, I respect them. And then him saying, now go to work, which means, but hey, now that you respect them, now you're locked in on the awareness of what you need to do. Now go beat him. You can beat him, but you have to remove any of that ignorance saying I'm better than him or I should beat him, and get back to the competitive spirit of, nope, he's here, but guess what? I'm going to do everything I can to beat him in this instant. And that is what locks you into as close to great execution as you can get. So kudos to Dusty Baker for for giving that to you. And again, based on all the prep you had from high school and with your brother and watching him lock in, it's just, you can see how the perfection of who you are and how you accomplish what you did at the highest level, how it all unfolded. So that's really cool. So you're with the Giants and you start to get into a groove. You have a great season in, was it 2001? You went 17-9, and then that's when you became sort of the ace for the team. Did you feel any extra pressure becoming the ace?
Well, just so you know, I was 18 and won 18 games in 1999 first. But
okay.
Anyways, I was just,
so you won 18 and 99.
My first,
okay.
Yeah, my first full season. So
wow, that's a great start.
In 98, I was just a reliever the first half of the season, and then became a starter the second half of 98. So my first full season as a starter, I won 18 games, and that was a huge learning experience. I mean, I cannot tell you, being in the bullpen for the first half of 98 season, how much those relievers helped me. They gave me so much information about stuff that I didn't even know existed, information of how they see things. And I was like, I can't see it. And they always told me, like, just file that back, because, you have to go out and experience that first to be able to fully understand. And they helped me out tremendously. So going into, I got a half a season as a starter, just trying to use those things. Well, in 99, pitching a full season and helping, getting a lot of wins and helping our team win a lot of games, really let me know that I was able to do this. And as long as I stayed healthy, that I was potentially able to do this for a long time. Mm-hmm. And so that's really the season that gave me the confidence to, do everything I could to stay there, because the saying I was told right from the beginning was, it's easy to get here, it's harder to stay here. And after that season, I realized, the hours of studying hitters, the, mm-hmm. The travel, the adjustments that you need to make, the mental toughness you need to have, all that stuff. I really saw all that play out with the full season as a starter. And I really understood that whole concept of, yes, it's hard to stay here, because there's a lot of guys that play in the major leagues that have had one or two phenomenal seasons, mm-hmm. but then that's it, And so I was always interested in, once I heard that statement, my first year in 98, I was like, okay, I want to figure out why the guys that are sharing this with me, how they stayed in the game for so long. Perfect. I want to do that, mm-hmm. And so taking all that information, having that really nice year in 99 really helped me start to believe that I think I could do this for a long time, but I got to keep evolving. I got to keep getting better. I can't let up, on anything. And I'm proud to say that never happened. I'm proud to say every single day I was trying to figure out how to learn more and more and more. Whether it was a good day or a bad day, didn't matter. And that's something that at the end of, when I retired, that I could really say and hold my head up high and say, every single day I gave it everything I got, and I was always trying to learn, try to get better in every facet. And, so I don't look back and think, oh man, I wish I did this better. I wish I did that, and all that stuff. And that's something I always try to share with not only my kids, but other kids is, if you love it, then do everything you can to learn and grow and improve. But if you, but if you say that you love it and you're not trying to do that, then I'm like, do you really love it? Because your actions don't really show that, and yeah.
There's so much in what you said that I want to unpack a little bit, because there's a lot in there. But the whole idea first of this idea that it wasn't just about getting there. Once you get there, then the journey really begins. It's like all this work over your whole lifetime to get to the major leagues, and you get there, Now it's about staying there. So now there's a whole nother level of work just to maintain yourself there. It's like in business, when someone creates a business and the business has its first year of breakout year of success, it's not over by a long shot. Now they've got to stay as a successful business. They got to continue to work at things to keep themselves in that mindset and in that flow. So as an athlete, you're exactly right. The work never ends. And that's why the passion and the love has to be undying, the respect, the gratitude, the understanding for what you're doing. And again, to the beauty of life or divinity of the vetting process, right? Okay, you thought you were good enough to get here. Are you good enough to stay? Are you willing to do 10x of what you did to get here to stay here? Because right behind you, there's 1,000 guys that are going to try and come next year and squeeze into this space. So you've got to constantly be continually pushing it and pushing it, pushing it for as long as you want to, or as long as your dreams, as far as your dreams want to take you. So I think that's a really cool point for athletes to understand, is not to look at it like, okay, as soon as I get there, then I've done it, then I can relax. No, this has to be a full-time, all-in passion to do something to be great in the world. There's over 8 billion people in the world. You want to squeeze into a space where there's less than 1,500? There's requirement for that, and the universe is not going to let up on you. So I love that. That was great insight.
When there's, I think, less than 30,000 players to ever play in the major leagues ever, you realize, like, if you get that opportunity, yeah, you're one of those guys. But then when you think about there's, X amount of major leaguers that have played in the major leagues, but what about what number of players have played 5 years, 10 years, whatever, right. And so because I played
even smaller.
Yeah. Because I played 12 years. I'm like, the amount of people that played 12 years or more in the major leagues is really small. Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of stuff that I look at. I'm like, my first day in the big leagues, I was just trying to do everything I could to get people out. At that particular time, I never thought about a long career. It wasn't until after that outing to where I felt good about myself, to where I was like, no, you did great, but there's a lot more to learn. And that's why I say I'm so grateful for the guys in the bullpen, because they helped me so much to look at the long career rather than just making it, just like you said. And so I'm so grateful for those guys. And so that after that first outing really started my learning. They became teachers. I became a student, and in figuring out how to stay up there as long as possible. And, it was, looking back, I'm like, I never say like there's a lot of stuff that I figured out myself, obviously, but I mean, without the help of tons and tons of people, I wouldn't have been able to achieve some of the things that I did, mm-hmm. And, but the biggest thing was I had to be able to listen, to take it in, and continue to ask questions, because just like we all do sometimes, we hear something, we really don't understand it, but we don't want to ask a question because it may seem like a dumb question, or we don't want, right. Especially guys.
But there's no such thing as a dumb question. But I understand, yeah, we're protective over looking like we don't know, when that's the way you get wisdom, is by asking.
Yeah. And so, again, that's another thing that I was taught from high school. So it's, all those things, can't come into play. And I look over my career and I'm always blown away. I mean, you throw out stats. A couple of guys on Twitter yesterday just wished me happy birthday and gave a bunch of stats. And I'm just like, I can't believe I got to do that. I mean, that's really just, cool. One of the things that I just, feel truly blessed.
As you should. You did something at the highest level in the world for a long time, and you did it really, really well. And you mentioned two things I just want to point out that are key for top level performance for athletes or anybody in life. One is to have a macro view, to see that big picture that you know you're going to get there so that you can go to work on the right things in the micro, so that you're not just working on pieces of the puzzle, not knowing what the puzzle is. Once you know, hey, I'm going to be successful, I'm looking at this long term, I know I'm going to get there, then you can work in the short term to do short term executables and stay focused on that to get there. The other thing that I love that you said was this continually questioning and being curious. To me, that has been the mark of every champion that I've dealt with, is that they're always inquiring, asking, want to know, want to learn more. So that's huge. And then I would even say a third thing, which is really interesting to me and something maybe I want you to explain a little bit more, especially given your upbringing, because you could come out of that upbringing thinking, why, where was my dad in that situation? What happened, and maybe not believe in yourself as much. And instead, you actually had no limits on what you thought was possible for you. And you kept proving that over and over again in the biggest situations on the biggest stage. So your belief was big enough to not restrict you to stepping out, being vulnerable, learning, and becoming great. So, did you always believe in yourself?
No, well, I've always been, and to some extent today I still am, I'm someone that's just going to kind of hang back and just kind of read the room and read things. It was always characterized as I'm shy, but I'm just not someone that is just going to be the first one to speak up and all that, just kind of trying to read the room, like I said. But so growing up, because I was like that, I was quiet a lot. And so it always appeared that I doubt myself. Even to this day, like I'll make comments and people are like, hey, no, it's okay, this and that. And I was like, well, I'm not saying that, or I'm not thinking that anything except for what I say, like that doesn't mean something else. And so that's kind of always something that I had to fight. But from when you ask me that question, the simple, and I think the most important thing I want people to understand is the reason why I felt confident in myself at any point in time. It's just simply because of love that came from my mom, from my grandparents, my brother,
wow, awesome.
Other family members, now, and coaches and other friends and stuff like that. Now, outside of our family, it may have been because we didn't have a dad growing up, so they put a little more attention towards us. But within the family, there was this, and always has been, this tremendous bond between us. And that's something that gave me confidence, security, all that stuff. My mom and grandparents, they were super supportive and encouraging in anything that we did, and pushed us just to get after it, really.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that's carried me through everything is really, it's love. And so it's, love from my family, from my coaches, friends, in college. I became a Christian in college, understanding a love of Christ. And then this may sound weird, but the love from the game. I loved playing baseball, and even sometimes when things didn't go well, I always felt like the game brought me something that really no one else could, especially when you think it from a not having a father perspective, and so that's something that I look at that now. I didn't realize that maybe during when I was playing, but after, when I could sit down and really think about, how much I enjoyed the game and how much it gave me, how much it taught me, I was like, yeah, in a way that's kind of in absence of a dad. My mom did everything she could. She sacrificed so much, is incredible. And same thing with our grandparents. But, there was always something missing. I never thought about it in that sense. I never missed a dad, because love was poured on us so much to where it's like,
so great.
We didn't really miss it, but kind of analyzing everything after the fact, it's like, you know, I think what baseball gave me was kind of a great substitute for what, you know, whether I knew it or not, what I was missing, you know, in my life. And, you know, my relationship with the Lord, it kind of blankets everything on top of that. And so, and, you know, so it's one of those things like that, but that's how I think. In the moment, I may not see it, but then afterwards, like I said, trying to analyze the room, so to speak, looking at it like, oh, maybe I did it because of that reason. And,
right.
you know, and then find out like, hey, what do you think about this? And, you know, cause I could probably ask you questions all day, and based off of your knowledge and experience, you could probably help fill in some gaps and stuff like that. But yeah, it was just one of those things that I can say, you know, with total confidence that love was it for me, for, you know, for everything.
That is really, really beautiful and really important, because love does conquer all. And when you feel that kind of love, you feel a sense of appreciation from your outer world and the people around you, which gives you a feeling of appreciation for yourself on the inside. And the greater you can honor, respect, and love who you are from a sense of understanding how much you matter in this world. And I can just tell you, I don't care what you've been through in your lifetime, if you're here and you're born into this world, you matter, period. The question is how you're going to choose to matter. But the fact that you knew that to me is what blew the doors off of possibility, where there was no limitation because of that love. You knew there was no limitation. And so that's really cool that that was part of something going on and underneath the surface that drove you. And I really love what you said about the love of the game and how that filled something for you that gave you a sense of understanding, approval, appreciation, joy that you didn't even realize all these years may have sort of just kind of filled that space for you, which is really awesome. It's such a testament to sports and our love of sports. I wanted to let you know that I offer private sessions for those who are truly serious about positively changing their life and breaking through to experience new positive results. Sessions are on FaceTime, Zoom, or Skype and are designed to empower you with a new awareness and strength of mind. This is open to athletes at all levels, business people, and individuals looking to get through and overcome everyday issues. For more, go to howardfalco.com or totalmindsports.com to connect by email, or call 480-585-9750. Answers and positive change for your life are closer than you think. Now, back to the podcast. Couple more questions here for you, Russ, and this has been great insight. So I really, again, thank you for doing this. What was it like pitching in the World Series?
It's unreal. The thing that I thought once we got to the World Series was there's only two of us left. We're it. Like, there's no other teams playing, just us two. And that was a crazy thought because, you know, I had never got to that point. You know, even in the College World Series, you know, there's 8 teams in the World Series. And yeah, you get down to the final 2, but it just, you know, you think about it from a major league standpoint where, you know, you're playing 162 games, then going through playoffs, and then, you know, and then it's just two teams standing. So I always thought that was cool. That I was ready. I was, you know, studying the Angels and all that stuff. And when I got to pitch game 2, I was fully ready. The mistake that I made was I try to be too perfect on everything. Wow. Why? Because it was a World Series, you know? So and this is what I tell people all the time. I allowed outside stuff to enter in my head that really kept me from doing my job. I allowed the magnitude of the situation to get to me, and it put more pressure on me to not fail. And so that's really what happened in game 2 is I didn't want to fail. And I went through the whole season, you know, 30 some starts plus in the playoffs, not thinking that at all.
It's amazing.
And to get to that point,
we're going to talk about this. Yeah.
But that's how it lets you know how magnified everything is when you're the last two teams.
Yeah.
Because when you listen to the World Series, they magnify everything. They make it out to be every single pitch matters and stuff like that. And it's just like, man, you can't think that way. So that game too, after I was done, I was, it was funny. My wife, when we left, getting on the shuttle back to the hotel, my wife, bless her heart, she was just like, hey, so what happened? And I kind of just like looked at her, but it made me actually think, like, yeah, what did happen? And after her and I, she knew, like, hey, let's give him a moment and talk about it. But and I told her she can always ask questions, because in college I didn't want to talk to anybody if I had a bad out, but I learned to grow out of that. But so she asked me that, but it really actually helped me pause and think, like, yeah, what did happen? And I realized and it was all mental. It wasn't physical. It wasn't because I wasn't capable of executing pitches, whatever. It was just, and so I determined from that point on, I was just like, if I get another opportunity to pitch,
all right, before you go to game 6, where you got to be able to have that opportunity after game 2, it's really, I want to talk about one thing that you said, because I think it unlocks something really valuable for anybody, sports or outside of sports. What did you say the fear was? The fear was you in not failing.
Yeah.
And when that dominates your mindset, that's coming from the only way you could have the fear of failing if you believed in that as a possibility. And because that's a belief, beliefs try and make their way into our reality. And so it, in a way, and it's going to sound very strange, especially as someone at your level, but it shows it can happen to anybody, is that can creep into the process to try and fulfill itself. That nefarious thought, like, oh, I might, a fear of failure. That's why your faith has to be greater than your fear. Your faith in succeeding has to be great. No matter what the stage is, no matter where you're at, you have to muster that faith, because you cannot let that fear corrode the possibilities. And it's interesting that was what you were operating out of, trying to avoid the fear of not executing. And that's already, the ship is off kilter when you're trying to do that rather than just doing what you're doing. So I just wanted to unpack that for the audience a little bit and let them sort of hear that, because it's interesting. But let's go now. So now you realized it, you had the conversation, you look back, why did that happen? You're like, man, I changed my thinking. I tried to be perfect. I was running from the fear of failure. I'm not doing that. I got an opportunity in game 6. Take it from there.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, we've always heard, people say, like if you fail, like, failing is not fatal,
right.
in sports, and so, just because you fail, it doesn't have to, mean more than, define you. It's a good way to put it. That it really, what people want to see is how you respond to that.
Bingo.
And so from that next day, that it was late at night or whatever. So woke up that next day and it was just like, look, I know these hitters, and when I go through my bullpens, it's about execution. And when I get a chance, if I get a chance to pitch again, that's all I'm going to concentrate on. So we went up 3-2. Game 6 comes. I have an opportunity to pitch in a game that could help us win the World Series. Now,
wow,
I wanted to start thinking about that and thinking about, like, man, if we win this game, and I get to pitch and we win the World Series, how cool that, So my first flinch was to start thinking about that. And I quickly remembered, listen, that got you in trouble already, so don't do that. You said the last, so many days that it's just going to be about execution. So So I went into that game just thinking execution. And so once from the time I started warming up to the first pitch, my main focus was every single pitch is about execution. And I can honestly say that that's one of the best games, probably if either the first or second best game I've ever thrown in my career. And anybody that was there that
Wow.
game will tell you how loud it was.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can tell you until I got taken out, I didn't hear a thing. You know, it's kind of like that moment in For Love of the Game, you know, where Kevin Costner says, what is it? Something, the mechanism. And anyways, and it just shuts out all the noise or whatever. And then there's times where it come back in and then go away and come back in. Well, for me, from first pitch to my last pitch, I couldn't tell you how loud it was. But when I came out of the game, I was like, holy crap, this is loud, you know? And so,
that's cool.
It was just all about execution. And I knew I could execute because I've been training myself for a long time to execute pitches. And I felt confident in the studying of the hitters and all that stuff. And so because of all that, you know, I knew that I can just focus on one thing, which is just execution. Now, if I didn't do the studying and I was unsure about how to pitch to guys and stuff like that, that would make it really, really hard. But that's something that I always took pride in, is when I'm out there on the mound, that I know what all the hitters' weaknesses and their strengths and their weaknesses, and how to pitch them according to my strengths, with nobody on, runner first, third, runner just on third, less than 2 outs, and these counts and that counts, you know, this first at bat, second bat, third, you know, and all that stuff. And I took pride in that. And so to be able to get another chance and respond that way was something that helped bring my, you know, game to another level. And then that took me into the next year, even though I got traded, you know, and leading the league in wins. And I'm like, that wasn't a mistake, you know, that just didn't happen. I mean, it's taking all of that stuff and learning and putting it together, you know, and so
one big moment.
But I just learned, and something that came out of that I don't know if this is an original quote from me or if it's something, you can tell me if it's out there, but I've never heard it. But something I learned late in my career is whoever adjusts fastest wins. And
wow, it's good.
So and I really think in sports, you know, that's very true, because in game 2, you know, they teed off on me and stuff like that. Well, if I didn't adjust fast, then I had really no opportunity, and just in every way of what I allowed into my head, how I thought about the whole situation, how I responded, how I went about my work in between the next start, et cetera, et cetera. If I didn't adjust, then it's going to be really hard to come out in the end a victor. And so that's something, looking back, you know, I'm just like, man, that played out very, very true. And so I try to share that with a lot of athletes, is, you know, that if you're competing against someone else, especially pitcher to hitter, if you don't beat that person the first at bat, well, you better adjust something, because guess what? That second at bat, they're adjusting too.
Right.
So, you know, and it goes back to not only whoever adjusts fast wins, but like what you said first is, like, you know, basically from what I heard you say earlier is, you know, whoever blinks first, you know, is going to lose. And
unbelief or unintentional.
Yeah. No matter how long that bat goes, you know, correct. I mean, you mentioned that I've thrown 10, 12 pitch at bats. And if I allowed, like, man, what do I need to throw? I don't know, you know, this and that. But,
right.
You know, then I would, in a sense, blink first. Because if the hitter is just like, I'm just here, man. I'm just here. I'm seeing the ball and I'm hitting it, you know. But if I'm there, it's like I'm just working on execution, no matter what the count, how many pitches I've thrown to the same person. then, if I don't break first, then I have a good chance of winning.
Exactly.
And so it's the same thing throughout the season from game to game to game, because sometimes you face one team and whether you do well or don't do well, your next start is against the same team. And so if you do well, now they're going to figure out what adjustments they need to make.
Correct.
Well,
yep.
You can't just say like, oh, just do the same thing. No, you have to watch and learn and say, okay, they made this adjustment, so I'm going to make this adjustment. And if you can do that faster on the mound, then you have a very, very good chance to be more successful than they are.
Well, I don't think anybody said that exact quote. So that is an original Russ Ortiz quote, which is a great quote. Well, what Darwin said was survival of the fittest. But what I think that really meant was the fittest means those with the greatest awareness to be able to adapt to change is the survival of who survives. And that's in life or in sport, is that, the one constant in life that we keep getting challenged with is change. That's the nature of divinity, of God, of life, is constant change. And so we have to be ready to face those challenges, to make those changes. And I think what you said was perfect in sport. You have to be able, you can't rest on your laurels when you're trying to compete at the highest level. And so that's exactly what you didn't do, was you kept yourself on top of it enough to create the change, to stay ahead of batters. The other thing, which to summarize what you said, was execution. In game 6, you just decided to just execute. You were well prepared, which is a key aspect of allowing yourself to drop into that space. You didn't hear the crowd because you were in this beautiful place of the zone where your greatest talent was coming out. And it's really cool that you say that's one of your top 2 games you ever pitched before you came out and left the team with a lead, which is phenomenal. And then you end up, after that season, you end up going to the Braves and you have the best record in baseball. Is that correct?
The most wins.
Most wins in baseball. Wow.
For the league.
So that moment, that challenge that you faced in 2, which had to be one of the toughest challenges of your life. Here you are starting in the World Series and it doesn't go the way you want. And now you're like, okay, I need to redeem. I want another opportunity. I'm going to change. You made the changes. You got back in. You redeemed yourself. That confidence spills over into your next season with the Braves, and it leads to the most wins in baseball, which is really, really incredible. So again, good for you for demonstrating that. And people are going to get so much out of this from hearing it from someone like you that was at the top level in the world, faced something that had to hurt. Can't imagine how it hurt after game 2, but yeah, I couldn't even begin to imagine. And then that had to be the longest, I don't know how many days it was till your next outing. Was it 4 or 5 days till game 6?
Yeah, 4 days off.
That had to be a long 4 days before you got to that point. But good for you for doing that. So as we kind of come to the end of our talk here, I was just wondering, what is some of the best advice that you could give, looking back now, to a young athlete or even a young pitcher who's coming up? What's the best thing you could tell them as it relates to life or sport and everything that you've learned?
The biggest thing for me is find out what you're passionate about. And if you can think about something that you're passionate about, whether you want to do it as a career or not, but when you find something that you're passionate about, I think you're going to tend to, put more into it. But like I told my daughter, I mean, she wants to perform on stage, as a career. And I told her for a long time now, it's like, you've made it clear that this is something that you're passionate about. Now, use that passion to fuel yourself to work on, perfecting your craft, to find out as much as you possibly can about your craft and all that stuff. So when you're passionate about something, to just continue to learn and learn more about, how you can improve and how you can dive in deeper into that, and do it because you love it. Don't worry about what that will bring you in the end, because that stuff will come. Or you can be a very successful athlete or whatever, and you never rise to the notoriety that you were hoping to, or you could rise to that notoriety and even more, and you hate it because you can't go anywhere on your own. You always feel like people want a piece of you, and it's too much. And
you have to maintain it. You have to protect it.
Yeah, you have to maintain it. And so I was just like, find something you're passionate about. So like, let's just say someone loves baseball. Okay, love it, work at it, learn more about it, do it because you love it, not because of it's going to get you. That other stuff, I really believe it'll come. If you're going to make it to the major leagues, you will. Now, is there a good chance that you'll make it to the major leagues? No. There's a horrible chance. The chances of you making the major leagues is not good at all. So rather than saying I'm doing all this so I can make it to the major leagues, the chances are you're not going to make it, and then that there's a good possibility that you'll look at your life and say, I failed at life. And I'm like, that's just something I try to encourage kids not to do, because you have to understand how hard it is to make it to the major leagues. That because you didn't make it there doesn't mean that you failed. Think about, if you look at it and you enjoy it, and you just continue to keep learning, all the things that you learned, this not only information, but the way how to, start a process and to adjust that process into becoming successful, how all those things come about from sports. That's why I love sports so much. You can look at your life and say, well, I didn't make it because it's really hard, but what I learned from all of that, I can use in, as a husband, as a father, in my job, and all that stuff, and to help me to be successful in those things. Because even if you make it to the major leagues, you're going to be those other things longer than you will be a major leaguer. And so you look at it, what's really important here? Is it important that you make it and you have a 5-year career and that's it? Or do you look at it as like, what can I learn? What can I get out of this? Because no matter how long I spend in professional sports, I'm going to be a regular Joe for a lot longer.
Right.
So why don't I work on, why don't I figure all this stuff, be passionate about what I'm doing.
And if it happens,
and all the things that you learn, use that to have a successful life, rather than looking, well, I had a good 5-year run, but my life is terrible after that. Well, to me, that means that you didn't really learn anything. And so I'm like, have a great life and look at what sports can teach you to be successful at life.
Love it. Wow. That's really, really good. So enjoy the journey, give it everything you have, believe that you can do it, but know either way, you're going to be okay. And you're going to pull everything you can out of this to help you in the bigger picture in the long run of life. I think that's a great recipe, because I've seen too many guys that want it so bad. There's so much pressure on everything that A, they're not having fun. They're miserable doing it. And B, it ends up ruining their chances of getting there because they're not in that space where they see the bigger picture. So it's really, really great advice. Last question for you, Russ. What does life look like for Russ Ortiz, 10 years retired? What are you up to these days? And are you enjoying yourself?
Yeah, I love it. I've gotten to spend the last 10 years, with my family every day, and, something that wasn't the case before. And so I love it. Yeah. So I love it. I retired at a great time where my kids' ages, they were still young. And so I've, gotten to be involved every day with them and see them grow and stuff, and learn what it's like to be an everyday husband, rather than at home 1 week, gone for 10, at home, for 10, gone for 2 weeks, and stuff like that. So it's been great. I've been able to start a small golf apparel company where we give 100% of our profits to charity.
That's awesome.
Just kind of using my experience of, like I talked about, passion. Baseball is my passion, and because of that, became passionate about golf and helping the community and giving back. And so I created that to do something that I would really
What's
enjoy.
the name of that company?
It's called 2GG Apparel. And so it stands for Second Guy Golf and Second Girl Golf. And
okay.
Yeah, so I was able to start that and help, create some jobs and be able to give back to organizations, charities that help to give people a second chance, whether it be, health, education, sports, etc. And so really proud of that. So I've been doing that since 2013. And so it's been great. So my days are sometimes golf, but mostly with family, and then, trying to help build the brand and be able to, make more so we can give more. So I don't take it
really great.
I don't take a dime from this, I did well enough with baseball. So it's like, I don't need to take anything from this. This is strictly to build this, to be able to help other people.
That is really awesome. Congratulations on that. Do you still watch the game? Do you have an itch to play? Do you keep tabs on what's happening?
I still watch. Yeah. When I can, the itch to play, no, because I know I can't move that fast anymore. I was looking for something. I saw some past clip of me pitching, like stopping a ball, turning around, slipping on the mound, getting up, grabbing it, throwing a guy out. And I was just like, I couldn't even imagine what it's like to move that fast anymore. So I'm really happy just being a fan of other guys. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Russ Ortiz, thank you so much for taking the time to share your wisdom, incredible insight with so many people who I know are going to enjoy this. I appreciate it, and congrats on a great career and everything you're doing now. And thanks for being on the podcast today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back real soon. You can hit the subscribe button to be automatically notified of new episodes when they come out. And please share the podcast with others you think would enjoy it. More information about my books on personal empowerment or inquiries about private sessions or group coaching can be found at my websites, howardfalco.com or totalmindsports.com. You're also welcome to connect with me on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Thanks again for listening, and remember that the one true guru of your life is always you. Until we see what you bring to yourself next time, be well.